The restaurant was grand, too grand. Golden chandeliers sparkled overhead, expensive violin music played softly, and everything smelled of luxury. From the outside, this was a dream, a fairy tale, the kind of place where love stories unfolded like magic. But tonight, beneath the surface of all this glamour, something didn't feel right. Aisha sat at the table, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her wine glass. She had dressed in her finest, a deep red silk dress that hugged her figure, her long curly hair cascading down her back. Across from her sat Damien, the man every woman dreamed of. Handsome, charismatic, wealthy, too wealthy. The waiter poured an expensive bottle of wine into Damien's glass. Without looking at the price, he simply nodded, as if money meant nothing to him. His wristwatch gleamed under the restaurant lights, a Rolex, the latest model. His tailored suit fit him perfectly, exuding the kind of power that turned heads wherever he went. He was a man who didn't just have money, he lived like he owned the world. Aisha smiled, but deep inside, something gnawed at her. "How was your day?" she asked, forcing herself to sound relaxed. "Busy as always," Damien said, leaning back in his chair. "You know how it is. Money never sleeps." He picked up his phone, scrolling through messages. Aisha noticed how he barely looked at her when he spoke. It was always like this: distractions, endless calls, constant interruptions. Yet, when they were out, he put on a show. He paid for everything without flinching, left tips that made waiters speechless, and made sure everyone knew that Damien was a man of status. But was that enough? Aisha wasn't poor. She had a stable job, a growing career, and dreams of her own. She wasn't with Damien for money. At first, she thought she was drawn to his confidence, his charm, the way he carried himself like a king. But now, months into their relationship, she was beginning to see cracks in the perfect image. "Are you listening to me?" she asked. Damien looked up, smirking. "Of course, babe. You were talking about your job, right?" Aisha sighed. "No, I wasn't." He laughed, reaching for her hand. "Relax. You're too serious sometimes." Before she could respond, his phone rang again. Without hesitation, he answered. "Yeah? Talk to me." Aisha watched him, feeling invisible. This wasn't the first time, and deep down, she knew it wouldn't be the last. She glanced around the restaurant. Other couples were engaged in conversation, laughing, lost in their own worlds. But here she was, sitting across from a man who had everything, yet somehow made her feel like nothing. As the night dragged on, Damien continued to show off, ordering the most expensive dishes, talking about his latest business deals, dropping names of powerful people he had met. And every now and then, he would throw in a casual, "Babe, you're so lucky to have me," as if his presence was a gift she should cherish. Aisha smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She wasn't sure what love was supposed to feel like, but this didn't feel right. Something was missing, and soon, she would find out just how deep the emptiness ran. Aisha sat in the passenger seat of Damien's sleek black Rolls-Royce, watching the city lights blur past. The leather seats smelled of money, the dashboard glowed with advanced technology, and the engine purred like a beast. Everything about the car screamed luxury, power, and untouchable wealth. But inside, she felt empty. Damien had one hand on the steering wheel and the other on his phone, glancing at his messages every few seconds. His confidence was undeniable, the way he controlled everything with ease. Yet in that moment, Aisha felt like she was just a decoration in his perfect life, something to admire, but never truly valued. "Where are we going?" she asked, staring out the window. "Somewhere nice," he said with a smirk. "Trust me, babe, you'll love it." Aisha didn't respond. She had learned that with Damien, questioning him only led to more distractions. He loved surprises, at least the kind that made him look good. Minutes later, they pulled up in front of a massive nightclub. The neon lights flashed against the pavement, and a long line of people stretched down the street, all waiting for a chance to get in. But Damien didn't wait in lines. As soon as he stepped out of the car, the bouncers recognized him immediately. "Mr. Damien, welcome back," one of them said, pulling back the red velvet rope. Aisha followed him inside, feeling the pounding bass vibrate through her chest. The club was extravagant. Gold-trimmed walls, VIP sections with velvet couches, and bottles of champagne lined up like trophies. Damien guided her to the private section, where a group of men and women sat, laughing and sipping on drinks. They all looked like him, dressed in designer clothes, wearing watches that cost more than most people's salaries, speaking with a confidence that came from knowing they had everything. "Ah, Damien, my guy," one of the men called out, raising his glass. "Finally decided to grace us with your presence?" Damien laughed, shaking hands with everyone. Aisha recognized some of the faces, business tycoons, social media influencers, celebrities. This was Damien's world. He pulled her close. "This is my queen, Aisha," he said, placing an arm around her. "Isn't she stunning?" The group nodded, offering lazy smiles, but their attention quickly drifted back to conversations. Aisha had seen this before, people who pretended to care but were only interested in themselves. She sat beside Damien as the night went on. The drinks kept flowing, laughter filled the air, and money was thrown around like it meant nothing. Damien ordered the most expensive bottle of champagne just because he could. Aisha watched him, feeling a sharp pang in her chest. Is this really what she wanted? She thought back to the beginning, how he had swept her off her feet with grand gestures, surprise trips, expensive gifts. She had mistaken it for love. But now she saw the truth. Damien was in love. With himself, with his lifestyle, with the image he had created. And she was just a part of that image. At one point, Damien leaned over to whisper in her ear, his breath laced with alcohol. "You're so lucky, babe. Most women would die to be in your place." Aisha stiffened. Was she lucky? Lucky to sit next to a man who barely listened to her? Lucky to be surrounded by people who didn't see her? Lucky to be in a world where money mattered more than feelings? She excused herself and walked toward the restroom. As she stood in front of the mirror, she took a deep breath. Her reflection stared back at her. Beautiful, yes, but tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of being part of a life that didn't feel real. Then she heard voices from the VIP section. "Damien, tell us the truth. Are you really serious about this girl?" Aisha froze. Damien chuckled. "Aisha, she's cool, man. She looks good next to me. That's all that matters." The group laughed. Aisha's heart stopped. She felt something inside her crack, like a glass breaking, shattering into 1,000 pieces. In that moment, she knew. She had to leave. But walking away from a man like Damien wouldn't be easy. And soon, she would find out just how dangerous it could be. Aisha's hands trembled as she pushed open the club's restroom door. The laughter from the VIP section still echoed in her ears, Damien's words playing over and over in her mind. "She looks good next to me. That's all that matters." She felt sick. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She had spent months convincing herself that Damien cared about her, that behind all the wealth and arrogance, there was a man who truly loved her. But now she saw the truth. She was nothing more than a trophy to him, something to display, a beautiful accessory to his lavish lifestyle. Her heart raced as she stepped back into the crowded club. She needed air. She needed to leave. But as she made her way toward the exit, Damien's voice called out from behind. "Aisha, where are you going?" She froze. Slowly, she turned to see him walking toward her, his expensive cologne thick in the air. His usual smirk was gone. Instead, his eyes narrowed, filled with something she hadn't noticed before. Possession. I need to go home," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. Damien laughed, but it wasn't the charming laugh she was used to. It was low, almost mocking. "Home? Babe, the night is just getting started. I'm tired." She lied, trying to step past him, but he caught her wrist. His grip was firm, just tight enough to make her pause. Aisha's stomach twisted. This was new. Damien had always been dismissive, self-absorbed, but he had never been forceful. "Let go," she said, keeping her voice calm. His jaw clenched, but he loosened his grip. "Why are you acting like this? What happened?" Aisha hesitated. What was she supposed to say? That she had overheard him reducing her to just another accessory in his collection? That she finally saw him for what he really was? "I just don't feel well," she said instead. Damien studied her for a moment, his gaze unreadable. Then with a sigh, he pulled out his phone. "Fine, I'll have the driver take you home." She nodded, relieved. But as she turned to leave, his voice stopped her again. "We'll talk tomorrow, babe," he said smoothly, flashing that same confident smile. "You'll feel better after some rest." Aisha forced a small nod and walked out of the club, her mind spinning. Tomorrow? No. There wouldn't be a tomorrow for them. She was done. That night, Aisha lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She had to end it. But how? Damien wasn't the kind of man who accepted rejection easily. He lived in a world where he was in control, where people didn't say no to him. She needed a plan. Her phone buzzed. Damien, sleep well, babe. Call me when you wake up. Aisha ignored it. The next morning, she packed up every expensive gift he had given her. Designer handbags, diamond jewelry, even the shoes he had bought on their trip to Paris. It was all going back to him. She didn't want anything tying her to him anymore. Then she typed a message. Aisha, Damien, I think we should go our separate ways. You're an amazing person, but we want different things. I hope you understand. She hovered over the send button, her heart pounding. Then she pressed it. Seconds later, the message showed as read. No reply. She exhaled, placing the phone on the table. It was done. Or so she thought. Minutes later, her phone rang. Damien, her stomach clenched. She let it ring. He called again and again. Then a message came through. Damien, Aisha, answer me. She bit her lip. Then another. You're joking, right? And another. You're mine, Aisha. You don't get to just walk away. Her blood ran cold. She had underestimated him, and she had no idea what was coming next. Aisha's hands trembled as she read Damien's last message. You're mine, Aisha. You don't get to just walk away. A chill ran down her spine. She had always known Damien was possessive, but she had never truly seen this side of him. The tone of his messages was different now, darker, more dangerous. Her phone buzzed again. Damien, pick up the phone, Aisha. She swallowed hard. No, she wasn't going to let him intimidate her. But then, another message appeared. I'm coming over. Aisha's heart slammed against her chest. No, no, no. She shot up from the couch, her mind racing. She needed to leave, now. She grabbed her car keys and rushed to the door. Just as she reached for the handle, her phone rang again. Damien. She ignored it, forcing herself to stay calm. But before she could step outside, her worst fear came true. A sleek black car pulled up in front of her apartment. Damien stepped out. Her breath hitched. He wasn't alone. Two of his friends, the same arrogant rich men who always surrounded him, stood beside him. They were all dressed in their usual expensive suits, looking out of place in the quiet neighborhood. Aisha's stomach twisted. She quickly locked the door. What does he want? Her phone buzzed. Damien, open the door, Aisha. She stayed still. A minute passed. Then another. Then, bang! A loud knock on the door made her jump. Aisha! Damien's voice was calm but firm. I don't like being ignored. She took a shaky breath. Damien, please leave. Silence. Then his voice dropped lower. I just want to talk. Lies. Aisha closed her eyes. Think, Aisha, think. She couldn't let him in, but suddenly her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Damien. It was her best friend, Zainab. Aisha didn't hesitate. She picked up instantly. Aisha? Zainab's voice was sharp with concern. Where are you? Home, Aisha whispered, her voice shaky. He's here. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm on my way. Aisha let out a breath of relief. Bang! Another knock, harder this time. Aisha! Damien's voice lost its patience. I'm not leaving until we talk. Her heart pounded. Then she heard one of his friends chuckle. Bro, she's acting like she's scared of you. Another voice added, Man, just take her somewhere and talk. She's your girl, right? Aisha's blood ran cold. Was that their plan? To force her into a car? Her hands shook as she dialed another number, 911. The phone rang, and the moment she heard the operator's voice, she whispered, There's a man outside my door. He won't leave. I think he's trying to force me to go with him. The operator's tone immediately turned serious. What's your address? She gave it. We're sending officers to your location. Stay inside and don't open the door. Aisha's chest tightened. She didn't know if she had enough time. Outside, Damien sighed loudly. Fine, he said. If you won't come out, we'll come in. Terror gripped her. She heard movement, footsteps. They were checking the windows. Then, sirens. Aisha gasped as flashing red and blue lights flooded the street. Damien and his friends froze. Then, just like that, they turned back toward the car. One of them cursed under his breath. Damien didn't even look at her door as he got in the car. Within seconds, they were gone. Aisha's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the floor, shaking. Seconds later, the police arrived. And then, before she could even process what had just happened, Zainab burst through the door. Aisha, she rushed to her, pulling her into a tight hug. Aisha couldn't hold it in anymore. The tears came pouring out. Zainab held her close, rubbing her back. It's okay, she whispered. You're safe now. But Aisha knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Damien wasn't the type of man to accept defeat. And something told her he would be back. Aisha barely slept that night. Even though the police had taken her statement and assured her they would keep an eye on her apartment, she knew Damien. He was arrogant, entitled, and worst of all, obsessed with control. He wouldn't let this go. Zainab had stayed with her, refusing to leave Aisha alone. Now, as the early morning sun crept through the curtains, Aisha sat on the couch, staring at her phone. No messages, no calls. Damien had gone silent, and that silence terrified her. Zainab stirred beside her, stretching. "You should sleep," she murmured. "I can't," Aisha whispered. Zainab sighed. "Aisha, we need to do something. You can't keep looking over your shoulder forever." Aisha swallowed hard. She knew Zainab was right. Then her phone buzzed. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw the name on the screen. Damien. She hesitated but answered. "What do you want?" His voice was calm. Too calm. "We need to talk." "There's nothing left to say." He chuckled. "Aisha, you think last night was the end? You think calling the police was enough? You know me better than that." Her grip on the phone tightened. "Stay away from me, Damien." His voice turned icy. "That's not how this works." Aisha's heart pounded. "If you come near me again, I'll get a restraining order." Another chuckle. "You think a piece of paper can stop me?" Zainab, who had been listening, snatched the phone. "Listen, you psycho. She's done with you. Move on before you end up in jail." Damien sighed. "Zainab, always running your mouth. Stay out of this." Zainab was about to yell something back when Aisha grabbed the phone and hung up. Zainab looked at her. "Aisha, this is serious. He's not going to stop." Aisha's mind raced. "I need to end this." Zainab frowned. "What do you mean?" Aisha exhaled shakily. "I need to show him I'm not afraid." Zainab's eyes widened. "Aisha, no. That man is dangerous." "I know," Aisha said, standing up. "That's why I need to face him." Later that evening, Aisha did something she never thought she would do. She went to Damien's mansion. The massive iron gates opened the moment she pulled up, as if he had been expecting her. Her stomach churned, but she forced herself to stay calm. Inside, everything was exactly as she remembered. Expensive, extravagant, cold. And there he was. Damien stood near the grand staircase, a smirk playing on his lips. "I knew you'd come." Aisha crossed her arms. "I'm not here for games, Damien." His smirk widened. "Aren't you?" She took a deep breath. "This is over. Whatever control you think you have over me, it's done. I am not afraid of you." Something flickered in his eyes. "Amusement? Annoyance? You think you can just walk away from me?" he said, stepping closer. Aisha held her ground. "Yes, and you will leave me alone." Damien's jaw clenched. "You were supposed to be different," he muttered. "Loyal." "Mine." Aisha's stomach twisted. He truly believed she belonged to him. She lifted her chin. "I was never yours." His eyes darkened. "You really think you can challenge me?" "I don't have to," Aisha said, "because you're already losing." Damien frowned. "What?" She took a step closer. "You live in a big house, throw money around, pretend you have everything. But you don't. You have nothing. No love, no real friends. Just power that you think makes you untouchable." His expression hardened. "And the worst part?" Aisha continued. "You know I'm right." For the first time, Damien looked shaken. She saw it, the crack in his arrogance. "I don't need your money, your lifestyle, or your control," she said firmly. "I am done with you, Damien. And if you ever come near me again, you won't just be dealing with me. The police are already watching you." Damien's fists clenched, but he didn't say anything. Aisha turned on her heel and walked out. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. A month passed. No calls. No messages. Damien had disappeared from her life. Zainab had been right. He was dangerous. But Aisha had refused to let fear control her. She had moved on, started fresh. And for the first time, she truly felt at peace. She had almost fallen for the illusion of luxury, the idea that money could buy love and security. But she had learned the truth. A lavish lifestyle meant nothing if it came with control, manipulation, and pain. And she would never let herself be trapped again.